From a young age, Elena Donio was determined to be a great leader and an amazing mom. But her plans take a detour the moment she realizes she has to choose one or the other.
Just feeling like I was hitting a wall, that all of a sudden I couldn't be excellent in all of these roles, and that I was struggling with the amount of strain that was creating. I was always a person that thrived on some stress and some anxiety and some strain and some challenge, but it became too much.
Hello, welcome to A Change Mindset. I'm your host, June Love Young, and this podcast is about what it takes to push through fear and face change head on. We'll learn from change agents who've led extraordinary transformations in their life, their work, and the world. I hope their stories inspire you to be the agent of change your life deserves. This is A Change Mindset. Hello, everybody. Oh my goodness, I am so excited for you to experience the brilliance and breath of fresh air that is Elena Donio. For over 25 years, Elena has been a fierce champion for women in the workplace, and she leads by example through her trailblazing roles as the president of SAP Concur, the CEO of Axiom, and board member of several tech companies. A sought-after executive leader in tech, she's led big companies through massive change and certainly has a lot to share about that. But in this conversation, she shares a more personal, intimate story of change that I think we can all relate to. What I love about Elena's story is that it ultimately reminds us that true success in any company, any field, any job is about being fully human, fully ourselves. Let's jump straight into my conversation with the extraordinary Elena Donio. Do you remember how we met?
I do. I absolutely remember how we met. I had just taken a new role at Concur, and I was preparing to address the entire organization that I was running at the time. And it was the new SMB business at Concur. I knew this needed to land really well. And I asked my husband if he knew anyone that could help me just be excellent. He had worked with you at Microsoft off and on for a number of years. And he said, "Oh, I know exactly who you should talk to." And so I called you, and I remember teeing it up in it really kind of almost like asking you for a favor, because I felt like the timeline was really short and I knew it was going to be some work. I wasn't totally sure what I wanted to say and what I wanted to do. And without hesitation, you said, "Yes, I'm in." And not only did that yield some of my favorite communications moments in my career, but also a friendship that is now, 11 or 12 years old.
Well, you have to know that I am one of your biggest fans. It's why I wanted you to be one of the first guests on this podcast. I'm just so inspired by the way that you lead companies and the way that you lead your family. You and Shannon are some of the best parents I know.
Yeah, you'll have to interview my boys at some point and see what they have
That
to
would be
say
amazing.
about that.
Okay, so we're here to talk about your change story, a change that you made happen in your life. Where does the story start?
So I think it starts in childhood, really, but maybe we'll accelerate through a few years. I had always been an individual that put a lot of pressure on myself to succeed and to grow. And for my whole life, I had been striving and seeking and working to arrive at the top of my game. And not because of the title or necessarily the responsibilities or the money. It was because I wanted to be the decision maker. I wanted to be deciding where we were going and what it was going to look like. And I found myself in that role. I found myself the head of marketing, the head of product management in a space that I really, really enjoyed. But at the same time, I found myself a parent of two really young children. But nothing had really prepared me for what it would feel like to be an executive in a rapidly growing software company and to really be the only person around the table, around that leadership table that looked like me. A couple of years after having my second son, so I had a 3.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, just feeling like I was hitting a wall, that all of a sudden I couldn't be excellent in all of these roles, and that I was struggling with the amount of strain that was creating. I was always a person that thrived on some stress and some anxiety and some strain and some challenge, but it became too much. And what I had wanted for my whole life wasn't working with my personal life and with this other thing that I had also wanted and hoped could coexist really, really well. So I decided that I needed a break. And so I went to my boss and said, I'm out.
You're out, just like that. You're one of the top execs at this company. You're this rising star. What about a smaller role?
In that moment, felt like if I can't do all of this and I can't do all of it well, it's not, okay, well, I should just dial this back and I should go to part-time or I should take a different role. Right? Like that was completely foreign to me because I did not want to not have a seat at the table. I did not want to run someone else's plays.
Right.
I did not want to execute someone else's vision. I did not want to be a recipient of direction. I felt like I had grown past that. And given that, I felt like there were only two paths. One was get a whole lot more help at home, which I didn't feel comfortable doing. The other was to walk away from my career. And so I wasn't sure where it was going to lead, but I made the decision to walk away from my career.
Look up, darling. Look, the sky has turned to gold.
So here you are, you've achieved your dream that you've worked so hard for, but then you realize that something has to change, that you actually have to give up on that dream. That must have been so painful.
It was extremely painful because I felt like here's this thing that I felt like I had been working on since I was 9 years old. It wasn't like I'd worked on it for 2 years. It was like my whole life had been leading to this moment, to this kind of role and to this kind of potential.
You've arrived.
I've arrived and I felt so disillusioned. You know, here I am, I have these two kids, but I can't do these two things at the same time. And I started to reflect on, okay, who were the women that came before me? Who were the leaders that came before me that did all of this well? And I couldn't think of any examples at the time. You know, the most amazing partners that I worked for in my consulting career were either single or divorced. They many times didn't have kids at all. And it was extremely difficult for me to find people to point to where I could say, right there, that's what it looks like. That's what I want.
So take us back to what life was like after you left Concur.
I spent a year just being with my boys, volunteering at the local children's hospital, doing a lot of yoga and self-exploration. And I know that's a very, very privileged existence. And I that is not lost on me that I had that space to go explore and to go think and to go be with my children. But I also realized that what I missed was the idea of being around other people's careers as they were unfolding and being in the game and competing and winning and building something. And I realized throughout the course of that period of self-exploration that wasn't going to be enough for me. It wasn't going to be enough for me to be the mentor and coach to 3 boys. I wanted to be the mentor and coach, I hoped, to many, many people, particularly women, as they were striving in their own careers and trying to find the way. And I just felt like, well, if I'm sitting on the sidelines, like, what good am I doing to all of them? Like, what lesson have I taught? It's not a great one. It's sort of like, hey, when it gets really, really rough, maybe you can't do it. And I realized that that wasn't right. You can do it. And I just had to do it differently.
Okay, so really, we have two change stories here. The first was you letting go of something that you've been working on for all your life to achieve this role as a leader. And then after that, at some point, you heard another voice from within saying, there's another change that needs to happen. At what point did you know?
I ultimately decided maybe 9 or so months in that there was a piece of me that was just really missing. I missed this idea of teams of people and helping build their careers, helping mentor and guide and coach. Wanted more of that as well. I wanted more of that interaction with people. And I decided, if not me, then who? Right. I dropped out because I couldn't figure out how to do it. Well, isn't it my responsibility to go figure out how to do it and then help other people do it? What has been this push toward equality in the world if I can't figure it out and be a part of the change?
How hard was it to come back?
I feel like that period of self-exploration was so unbelievably clarifying that by the time I decided to come back, I knew I had to. What was hard about the coming back, though, was how. And I felt like I didn't have a lot of examples. I didn't have a lot of people to point to that looked like me and wanted to have the kind of life I wanted to have. I decided that it was important for me to be a whole human, for me to be physically sound and mentally sound. And mentally sound meant participating not just as a corporate executive, but also as a philanthropist, giving more back outside of the company. I ended up joining a nonprofit board around that time as well, King County Boys and Girls Clubs, because I wanted to serve children that needed us. The question for me and the hard part about the reentry was how to do it while maintaining all of those dimensions of myself that I feel I had lost on the way out.
Take me to that hidden place. Promise me the glass will break.
I experience you as someone who is incredibly ambitious. You just want so much out of life. Where does that come from?
That is such a good question. I think from a really early age, I wanted to not worry about money. I saw my parents worry a lot. And I saw the strain that created. And I knew that I didn't want that. I knew that working really, really hard was the key. I also knew from a really young age that I didn't want anyone else to take care of me. I wanted to be able to be making the decisions. And I think that started really early. I was setting up shop on the sidewalk, selling all my old crap to people when I was 9, because I needed money for the next, 5 books I wanted to read or whatever it was. And so I was from a really young age trying to make my own way and really recognizing that some degree of financial success was going to be important to that. And that degree of financial success was going to be predicated on me studying really hard, working really hard, and being creative about the ways that I could create income along the way.
Any regrets taking that year off?
A little bit. I feel like it was really, really necessary for me. But when I think about how I want to coach other women at similar crossroads in their lives or men at similar crossroads in their lives, I don't want them to take a year off. I want them to figure out how to work through it and to claim the space that they need. And I spend a lot of time doing that. I mentor a lot of people that are mid-career working through those moments. And I spend a lot of time helping them figure out what it is that they need and how to go ask for it, how to demand it, how to create a world where those things can exist. I think it's particularly hard for parents now in a global pandemic to figure out how to navigate all of that. And so those demands have just increased. I don't have regrets about taking that year, because I don't think that I would be where I am now without it. But at the same time, I don't want every woman in the world to have to do it. Like, I want to help create a world where they don't have to do that in order to figure out how to have all these dimensions of themselves present in their lives and in their work.
I'm interested, what did you have to overcome internally in order for you to decide, yeah, I can do this. I can be an executive and lead this large group of people and be the mom that I want to be?
I think like so many things in life, it was a practice. I had made this decision that I needed to come back, and that there was a part of me that was missing when I wasn't in the role in a company around a lot of people and directing traffic and driving growth and being in a leadership position and hopefully impacting other people's careers. I knew I had to fuel that. And so that wasn't the question. Then the question became how. And I think what I had to overcome was that I wasn't going to look like everyone else, but I wasn't going to be able to measure myself in hours and air miles. And I sat down with Raj Singh when he asked me to come back and start and run our SMB business, our small and mid-market business. We had breakfast, and I'll never forget this. And I said, okay, well, here's what it has to look like. I'm not flying every week. I'm not going to be in the office crazy hours. I'm going to manage a schedule that makes sense. I'm going to sit on a nonprofit board. By the way, I might have another kid, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I had this whole long list, and he just started laughing on the other side of the table. And he looked at me and he said, you do know you're talking to yourself right now, not to me, right? And it was this very clarifying moment where he was saying, I just want you to come do this with whatever part of you can possibly bring, because I trust you.
Yeah.
And by the way, I want you to have a big life and to create sustainability, because that's what's going to keep you here for the long term. And in that moment, I just let go of a lot of strain and stress about what it had to look like. And I came back and started practicing all those things.
Is a gift that we don't see, brought to life by the storms that wreck the sea.
I've heard you talk about this concept of parenting loudly in the workplace, and it sounds like it's a lesson that you learned after you came back to Concur. Tell us about that.
I don't know, about a year later, where I realized I was coming in, I was practicing all these things, and I was sort of the proverbial duck gliding across the lake with the legs underneath doing all the work. I was holding it all together and running really fast, and we were seeing all this success in the new business unit that we had just started. I was super proud of that and really. And then a really interesting thing happened. Someone that I worked very closely with, an executive in the company, came to me and the rest of the leadership team and said, there's something that you have in your lives that I want. I want children. And he was a 50-year-old gay man, single. We all said, great. What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? How can we support you? And within, I think, 10 months, with a phenomenal surrogate, he had twin babies. And he parented in a way that I'd never seen before. He parented so loudly. He would get on leadership team meetings and just, you could hear him shouting in the background on the conference call, just saying like, oh my God, I've got a quad ear infection. I got 4 infected ears over here. How in the hell do you guys deal with this? Or I got a double blowout right now, guys. I need a minute. And he was just so over the moon about these babies. And we all knew Luke and Lena. We knew everything about them. We knew of every diaper change. We knew of every ear infection. And I just realized through him that I was doing it wrong. I realized that the whole company knew those 2 children better than they knew any of mine. And mine had 6 years on his. And so what he taught me was that what I was doing was working, but I wasn't teaching. I wasn't laying down the track for all of the other men and women to see that it's messy and it's hard and it's chaotic and it's beautiful and it's to be celebrated and embraced, not endured alone. And those are the lessons that make these leadership roles accessible. It's not the lesson about like the brilliant strategic decision or the amazing execution or the report or the data you look at. It's about being a full human and the fact that that's possible. And I think, by the way, that the best companies are run by full and complete humans.
Yes. And I do think that this global pandemic has taught a lot of workplaces that it's okay to show up as fully human. We don't have to hide the mess and magic of real life.
Days revolving on a spinning still that we can't reach. Phones they ring, bringing lovers to their knees.
I know your parents have had a huge influence in who you are. One of the things I've heard you say is that they taught you resilience in its relationship to failure. Tell us more about that.
You know, I think about this so often because I so often coach mid-career young women that I walk away from interactions with them and I feel like you are so competent, you are so capable, you are so brilliant. And the thing you're lacking is confidence. And like, that is the thing that I perceive as holding you back. And I'm not a psychologist, but that's my perception. And so I reflect a lot on where did that come from for me? And believe me, like it's still something I practice all the time. But I think for me, it came from having parents that didn't think it was their job to make my life easy in the sense of like risk taking, whether it was physical risk. You know, I broke a bunch of bones. I got stitches in a number of places. My parents were not constantly there telling me to be careful and play it safe. They were there saying, go for it. Go for it. Like I was a skier. I, took a lot of risks in my, my physical self, played a bunch of sports, in and out of the ER. And then there was also the sort of intellectual risk as well, taking the hard class, or I lost a lot of elections, I'll say, through the course of my childhood. And I think those are the moments where you sort of lose. In fact, I applied to several colleges and I didn't get into my first choice university either. And I brought that rejection letter into my dad came home from work that night and I showed him the small envelope and he said, well, I think that's a mistake. And I was like, no, it's the small envelope. Like, here's what it says. Like, you can read it yourself. And he's like, no, I just think they're making a mistake. Like, I think they're missing out. And so I don't know what you're going to do about that, but I'd probably do something about it if I were you. And they had like all over their documentation, they had, we don't take appeals and blah, blah, blah. But I did it anyway. I thought, well, what do I have to lose? And so I went to my history teacher, my Spanish teacher, and the woman that owned the Haagen-Dazs franchise that I was managing. And I asked them, like, these are people that liked me. So I asked them to write letters and I wrote my own letter. And so I sent them all to them, to UCSD. And like 3 weeks later, the big envelope showed up. And it was this letter that said, upon further consideration, you're in.
What? Okay, it must have been the Haagen-Dazs lady.
I don't know. Maybe it was my letter, but
what did you say in the letter?
I have no idea. I wish I had it, actually. I think I said something like, I promise I'll do a good job when I show up or something. I don't know.
Take me to that hidden place. Promise me the glass will break. Take me to that hidden place.
So it sounds like your parents just empowered you at a really young age.
we were kind of encouraged to figure things out on our own. And I try to take that into my own parenting style. It's very hard, I realize now, and I have a lot more respect for how they operated now. It's very hard to watch your kids fail and to watch them hurt and to not get involved. But I think that's what my parents did really, really well, is they didn't really get involved. But I think they kind of were onto something with this idea of, we're not here to make your life easy. We're here to give you some tools.
How would you define a big change? Like for you, like what does a big change look like?
I think a big change is when you're really putting something at risk, when you're putting something that is comfortable, at stake, and you're thinking about, life on the other side. And it may be good, but it may be really crappy. It may be that you're about to learn something that you don't like or you don't want. And I think that's what change is about. And back to this point about childhood, I feel like I was a bit odd this way. And maybe it's a birth order thing. I'm the third kid. Maybe it's a wiring thing. But my parents moved a couple times. We moved a couple times when I was a kid. And I remember my reaction to that was, oh, maybe there will be some super cool kids at my new school.
Wow.
And I talked to my husband about this now, and he's like, that is such a weird reaction.
Yeah.
Like my reaction would be, oh my God, what am I losing? And your reaction was, what might I be gaining? I try to take that with me into the big changes in life now. And in fact, when Concur was acquired by SAP, it was a moment of great mourning for many people, and a moment that really called for a different brand of leadership. And I remember reflecting on that exact point. Instead of thinking about what we're losing, how do we think about what we're gaining?
Yes.
Oh, miss me, the glass will break. Fragility is a gift that we don't see, brought to life by the storms that wreck the sea.
Elena, I know that you are so passionate about helping young women who are entering the workforce, who are moving up as leaders, and maybe facing similar challenges that you might have faced. What's your message to them?
My message to them is that you can do it. You can be a whole person. You can be an authentic person. You can exercise all of these dimensions of yourself and still do the work. And so there are 3 things to think about, I think. One of them is to have your people around you that are going to be there on your best and worst days, that truly see you and know you, and that are going to help you navigate all of these circumstances, whether it's your best friend, your mom, your sister, your brother, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend. Have your people. The second is practice saying yes. I think we give a lot of people advice that, the key is to learn how to say no so you don't get taken advantage of. That really hasn't been my experience. My experience has been we really unlock ourselves when we learn how to say yes, and the things to say yes to, and the places of risk and of change that we put ourselves into. And the last one is to put a time frame around mourning. You're going to let go of some things along the way. You're going to lose some things. You're going to have some failures. Put a time limit on the amount of time that you're willing to mourn, and then close the door on it. And to know that all of these things are a practice. It's about, what are you going to practice every day and every week to prepare yourself for the space that you want to be in?
So good. Elena, this has been so much fun hanging out with you. I look forward to having you back on the show to chat more and really glean from your wisdom. Thank you so much for being here today. And also thank you for being who you are, for being someone that women and men and everyone can look up to, because you are a whole being, a whole human. Thank you.
You are so welcome. It was absolutely my pleasure. And I look forward to hearing all of your other amazing guests on Change Mindset.
Coming up, we reflect on this change story and how you might apply it to your own life. All right, so what can we learn from this conversation with Elena Donio? In the Change Manifesto, the free companion guide to this podcast, I share 4 mantras for a change mindset. And I think one of those mantras is really pertinent to what we heard today from Elena's story. And that's the one that says, it's okay to want something else. It's okay to want something else. I think Elena models this so well in making what she describes as an excruciatingly painful decision to walk away from her career, something that she could never have imagined doing. Remember, this is a person that just doesn't give up. As a senior in high school, she convinced a prestigious university to turn a rejection letter into an acceptance package. So imagine how difficult and strange it must have been for her to give up, especially as those around her were probably saying, why would you do that? Why would you quit? You're not a quitter. You can do this. But amid all that pressure, Elena decides to honor her inner voice, saying, it's okay to want something else. It's okay to leave your dream behind in pursuit of something else that you value deeply. Think about what in your life right now doesn't feel right. Give space for your inner voice that's saying, I want something else. I need something else. I deserve something else. I know settling for status quo might feel comfortable, easy, safe, but in the long run, doing so leads to self-betrayal that eats away at your soul. For Elena, she had to step away for a reason. And at the surface, the reason was her kids and her commitment as a parent. But it turns out it was something much bigger. It was the beginning of a journey to find herself, to discover the path of being fully human. And so when she returned to work, she realized that this was the key that she's been looking for, the key to being successful and fulfilled and to juggle all the things that she wanted to juggle. The key was to be fully human at work, at home, and everywhere in between. This is so hard to do sometimes at work, where emotions and personal struggles and the messiness of life are often seen as inappropriate or out of place. So, agents of change, I leave you with 2 takeaways today. Remember that it's okay to want something else in life and in work and in the world. And remember, being fully human, fully vulnerable, fully yourself is the path to true fulfillment and joy that lasts a lifetime. Thank you for listening to today's episode of A Change Mindset. If you want to be inspired to lead change in your own life, head over to achangemindset.com, where you can find more resources, tips, music, and a place where you can share your own change story. And please follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to your pods, because you do not want to miss the amazing episodes coming up. A Change Mindset is brought to you by Zoom Communications, with music by Towers.